and Dr. James Dobson is with us now. Dr. Dobson, how are you?
Laura, it's always an honor to be on your program. We're glad to have you in Colorado Springs. And let me begin by congratulating you on the #1 bestseller, Power to the People. I'm reading it, and it's outstanding.
Well, I really appreciate your support of that, and I know you have done so much for the values issues over the decades, and now it seems to me that the Bush administration is all but thrown in its support behind Rudy Giuliani for president, especially after those comments by Dan Bartlett a few weeks ago. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Laura, first of all, your introduction just now had an error in it that is also being repeated by Sean and Rush and Hugh Hewitt and the mainstream media. It's just amazing how when something gets into the culture, into the consciousness of the media, it just takes on a life of its own. I have never, ever said in my life that I wanted to start a third party or that I would support a third party. They don't work. There hasn't been a successful third party for the presidency since 1860, and I stood before about 50 of my colleagues in Salt Lake in an event that has been reported widely, and I spoke against the idea of starting a third party. That's not what this is all about. This is, however, a primary season when voters sort out who they're likely to vote for. And I said I could not and would not vote for anyone who's pro-abortion, and I also couldn't vote for anyone who didn't favor constitutional protection for marriage. And if that is a crime against humanity, as it seems to be, I'm not sure I understand it, but that's what I said.
Well, so you talked about the possibility that it would be a growing likelihood for a third-party challenge to emerge, though, right, because of Giuliani.
Well, that could be true because there's a lot of frustration with where the Republican Party is going, but I don't see that as a solution. Mm-hmm. And have never proposed it as.
Well, what do you think about the White House's? Clearly, it looks like they're lining up behind Giuliani over at the White House. Peggy Noonan wrote about it last week. I've talked about it now for a couple of weeks. Does this disturb you?
It disturbs me greatly, and it also disturbs me. By the way, I need to say that I'm speaking for myself and not for Focus on the Family because we're into political matters here, and Focus on the Family is not a political organization. But I am very concerned. It looks to me like the president might not believe his own rhetoric because he has spoken so passionately and consistently for the pro-life, the sanctity of human life ideology, and now he's apparently in favor of a guy who is pro-abortion. He's never repudiated Roe v. Wade. He supported partial birth abortion. He's supported public funding for abortion. He opposed marriage protection in the Constitution, as I mentioned. He's in favor of school choice. I mean, it just goes on, and I really don't understand why he is apparently abandoning his own principles.
Well, has it been a mistake then, Dr. Dobson, for social conservatives not to have lined up behind someone earlier this year, or certainly earlier than this fall?
Well, you know, social conservatives represent all kinds of people and all kinds of views. How you go about lining up people behind somebody when there is no Ronald Reagan out there. I mean, there's just no clear, overwhelming choice, and so I think conservatives are doing the very best they can under those circumstances to make their own decisions about
right. But you're a leader. You're a leader in this movement of social conservatism, without a doubt. You're one of the top leaders, and I think a lot of people were surprised when that private email was leaked, where you had somewhat of an unflattering reference to Fred Thompson, because people think, well, Thompson's not perfect. Maybe he's not the most exciting person, but he's certainly more socially conservative than Giuliani, and yet Dobson's saying this about him.
Well, I, again, speak only for myself. By the way, I've only endorsed one presidential candidate in my life, and that was in 2004, George Bush. I've never stepped into that arena before, and I wrote a private note when I was not happy about some things that had occurred, and my note was too harsh and had that tone to it, and I regret one of the four things that I said about Governor Tyler, Senator Thompson, because he, is a decent human being. But I spoke against him, and for myself, for the reason that he did not vote for marriage protection when the issue of a constitutional amendment came up, and his idea and what he's saying on the campaign trail is that he wants every state to make its own decision about the definition of marriage. Well, that will destroy marriage. You can't have 50 different definitions of marriage. I mean, nobody knows who's married and who isn't. And you go from one state to the other, and all of a sudden you're not married.
Well, you would concede, though, Dr. Dobson, that none of these candidates are going to be perfect. I mean, we all have disagreements with these candidates, and this is throughout politics, throughout the history of politics. You're not going to get anyone who's perfect. So to play devil's advocate with you, let's say that social conservatives stay home, or they just decide they can't vote for Giuliani if he's the nominee, and then Hillary Clinton becomes president. Will that make social conservatives happy?
Well, again, you're rushing to the national election when we're in a primary season, and a lot of things can happen between now and then. You just don't know what's going to take place. The history of presidential campaigns is surprises. So what will happen down the road remains to be seen. But people are trying to decide which candidate that's out there, and I'm speaking primarily of the Republican Party at this time, which one would be their best choice. They're not looking for somebody who's perfect because he or she doesn't exist, and I understand that. But for 35 years, Laura, for 35 years, I have fought for the sanctity of human life. I have never wavered once in that period of time. And since 1988, when I went to Washington, D.C., and I spoke to 400,000 people that had gathered on the Washington Monument Mall, and I said, and we have it on videotape today, I said, I will never, for the rest of my life, cast a single vote for anybody that would kill innocent babies. And then marriage, of course, I've been pro-family for all those years, too.
Well, absolutely. Right, but Dr. Dobson, remember what Giuliani said, and I'm not for anybody either. I'm not endorsing anyone. I'm trying to figure this all out. But what Giuliani has said is that he's going to put people on the court like Scalia and like Thomas, like Alito, like Justice Roberts, and that's the only way he's going to affect abortion policy really in the United States, right? If he does the right thing there, then he could be terrible on all these other issues, but actually, you would actually get what you wanted.
Laura, that makes me want to say whoopity-doo. He's made one statement about who he's going to put on the court, if you believe him, but he did not appoint reasonable, from my point of view, conservative judges when he was in as a mayor in New York. There's a lot that a president can do. There's a lot this president has done. He supported the Mexico City policy. I've never heard Giuliani say that he would support that, having to do with...
Yeah, I asked him about that, actually, when he came on my show, and he wasn't really prepared to talk about it. Can we move, Dr. Dobson, get away from...
That. But, there's the bully pulpit, there's parental consent, there's spouse...
Right, but you'll admit that Hillary Clinton will be a disaster for the pro-life movement, yes?
I not only admit that, I lie awake nights thinking about it.
So the main thing is to make sure that she doesn't get in, right?
Well, the main thing is to select the best candidate that we have and then decide whether or not we can, in good conscience, support that person.
Do you think
there are some candidates out there I could support, but I don't want to talk about them yet.